What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the return of the Commissioner's Office podcast. My name is Daniel Stein. Thank you all for joining me as we have a very special episode today. Now, I know a lot of my episodes have been about football. In fact, I think maybe every single one of them, with the exception of one, have. However, think about how many commissioners there are in North American sports. You got football, you got baseball, you got basketball, you got hockey. All right? I can talk about more than just football here. And that is the subject of this episode, which is baseball. But not MLB baseball, rather youth baseball. For example, how many of you guys played baseball as a kid? I know I did. Some listeners probably still play baseball now, in whatever age you are. But when I was a kid, I played baseball when I was in maybe third grade up to like a freshman or sophomore in high school. So I've been around the block a few times. But I think everyone has noticed that there's been a bit of a decline in enthusiasm about America's pastime. And maybe it's seen in the form of people not being as enthusiastic to watch MLB games. Not as many people are going to them anymore. And maybe it's a different problem. That problem can come up in youth baseball as well. I'll hit you with a stat, for example. In 2002, from ages 9 to 17, there were 9 million kids playing baseball in the U.S. But in 2013, just 11 years later, there were only 5.3 million left. That's a 41% decrease. That is not, that's not normal. You're not supposed to see this kind of thing. However, not all baseball has declined. We've seen kind of loss in numbers of kids playing house baseball, or, like rec leagues. But we've seen a rise in travel baseball. In fact, travel baseball has gained around 1.3 million players by 2015, which was twice as many as it had in 2005. And these leagues are not like your normal rec leagues. They're quirky. They're not like others. Some of these leagues start with kids as young as 4. Not rec leagues. These are travel leagues. Now, before I keep going, I'd like to explain what travel baseball is. In a nutshell, for people who aren't super familiar with how these kind of leagues work, travel baseball is generally seen as more competitive. The talent level this is all very generalized, but generally seen as, like I said, more competitive, and the talent is generally better. And it's also different because often the coaches are either former professional athletes or semi-professional, maybe they played in college, or they're coaches. And they're personally paid to train kids. That's different from like a normal rec league where like a parent will like volunteer to coach a team or something like that. As far as I know, in most rec leagues, parents are not like paid to coach, nor are there professional coaches coaching house teams. And this is not just specific to baseball. I mean, there are football teams, there are like travel football teams, there's travel hockey, that is huge in the area where I live. There's also basketball. They have other leagues outside of, like regular like house basketball, or like even if you want to get up to like regular high school basketball. Altogether, youth sports is a $15 billion a year industry. Think about that for a second. Youth sports, that can start at like the age of, as I mentioned, 4. That's when some of these travel baseball leagues starts, all the way up to 17. That industry makes $15 billion a year. That could be a problem in itself, but we'll get to that in a second. This episode, I wanted to shed some light on because this is a local issue. This is not, for example, me ranting about how the Bears are going to mess up another good quarterback or something like that, or how, the Cubs aren't going to spend money because MLB owners may or may not be cheap. This is something that affects normal people, ordinary people who are just going about their lives, and there are the challenges of travel baseball versus house baseball, and trying to do what is right for your children and trying to have your children, have good lives and have fun in their youth. So let's talk about the appeal of travel baseball.
So when you're playing with travel teams, now you're playing maybe on a little bit better team because they're kind of handpicking 2 guys from this school, 2 guys from that school. If you get 2 players from 10 different schools, you're going to be a pretty good team. If you get 2 of their best players, you're going to do well in tournaments. I think that's an advantage.
That's the voice of Mike Napoleon, a longtime baseball coach at New Trier High School. I sat down with him and talked to him about high school and travel baseball and how they differ from each other.
I've been coaching for a long time. I'm on my, 27th year at New Trier as a head coach, and 41st year of coaching in high school. So, yeah, I'd say I have a little bit of insight.
Coach Napoleon used his many years of experience to explain to me how youth baseball has evolved over time and how travel ball is a fairly new phenomenon.
When I first started, it was all house league stuff. And the house league was the way to go. And then there was all-star teams taken from house league, and then they played in certain tournaments. Tournament and travel baseball has become a new life. They have realized, I think, that tournaments, that this is a way to get the best kids playing all on a team, and then to play in different tournaments where they can compete against other good teams. It started out just being like a 12U type of thing, and it's gotten to the point where it's like, I think 8U is all the way down to 8U. So, and for those that are listening, 8U is like 8 and under. What's happening is that some of these travel teams are taking the good players out of the house league, and kind of the house league's kind of almost been non-committal type of thing.
So one more, you talked about the when you first started, started mostly as house leagues. When did those teams that like were 12U and like started like picking people from the house leagues, when do you think that like started?
If I had to put a year on it, it was right around 2000, maybe 99. Actually, my son was a 12-year-old and went to Cooperstown around here, and he was the first group of kids that went to Cooperstown. So the Cooperstown thing was a big tournament that kids got to stay overnight, stay at Cooperstown. They have little league fields and stuff like that. 200-foot fence all the way around, about 15 different fields. So, and the kids stayed in a dorm, and it was kind of fun for them. He was on the first team from Wilmette to go to Cooperstown. And but I think that 12U, they started doing things like 16U, 14U, 15U, about, I would say, 98, 99. And for high school kids, it was all American Legion baseball. That's what kids played. When they were in high school, if you were good enough, you played American Legion baseball. If you weren't good enough to play the American Legion baseball, which is 18U, then you played on a 16U travel team.
Naps didn't mention how a lot of these more organized teams can have better equipment, better facilities, more professional coaching, but that can all come at a cost, mainly monetarily.
And it's quite expensive to go on all these travel tournaments, because I know for a fact these tournaments are costing $1,500 sometimes to enter a 3-day tournament.
And, you need to pay in rec leagues too. But are you paying $500 to $2,500 per year? Because that's how much travel ball costs. According to the Hitting Vault, it costs between $500 and $2,500 per year, not even mentioning the cost of equipment or like physically traveling places. Think about that for a second. Like, for example, let's just go with like a baseline kid here. He plays house baseball for a couple years. By the time he's, we'll say 10, he wants to play with better players. He says, I want to play travel baseball. And if he plays travel all the way up until he goes to college when he's 17, we'll say that the parents are spending like $1,500 a year. I mean, they're dropping 10 grand over the course of like 7 years to have their kid play travel ball. Think about how insane that is. Another thing that travel baseball teams unfortunately do is cut people from teams. Theoretically, that's how, travel baseball should work. But the problem with this is you're creating a sense of competition here between house baseball and travel baseball. And there shouldn't really be a competition because they're completely different in the way that in their like business model per se. For example, I'm going to quote a Washington Post article here. Travel teams and private skill coaches can also drive up costs for traditional rec leagues. So, and that makes sense in theory because travel teams are going to spend the money to acquire nicer equipment, get good fields, get good coaches, and these rec leagues who are already losing membership, they have to invest more money to get a better product. So they have to get better fields as well. They have to get better equipment. And once again, competition is good because it keeps the standards of the play up. That's not the problem. The problem is when they're both increasing costs, that's not good for people who don't have a lot of money, especially the rec leagues, because the rec leagues aren't supposed to be expensive. That's the point of them. Travel is supposed to be rather expensive. Now, there's an argument in itself whether travel ball is too expensive, but rec leagues are not. So that's kind of the essence of the issue here as far as pricing goes. Now, another point about travel baseball is that it's super competitive. And this does depend on where in the country you are. Like, for example, I live in Chicago, a big city, third largest in the country. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of competition there. But I'll quote here a guy named Tom Ferry, who's the executive director of Aspen Sports and Society Program. Aspen is a nonprofit think tank. They do polling on stuff like this. This is what he had to say about this stuff. Quote, "The children left behind either grow unsatisfied on regular recreational teams or get the message that the sport isn't for them." And Ferry wasn't the only one who thought this was the case.
Maybe they get told early on when they're 7 and 8 that you're no good in baseball, which is ridiculous because most of your growing years is still way ahead of you.
This is the crux of the issue here with this competition between travel ball and house ball. Kids either aren't deemed good enough to play or they're just being priced out by these expensive for-profit travel teams that start training kids before they're in kindergarten. It's like this in soccer as well. I remember when I was in school, a lot of kids my age were playing travel soccer. When I was in elementary school, not in middle school, not in high school, they already had played soccer for 5 years when I got to high school. So once again, this is not something that just involves baseball, but I'm focusing on baseball because it's the most, I think, applicable not only to me, but to a lot of people in my area. So how about regular high school baseball? What are the advantages of playing that versus playing travel ball? Here's what Coach Knaps had to say.
The advantages of playing with your high school summer team is that you can play with the kids that you know and that you'll be good for the following spring. You get to know who they are. The parents get to know the other parents. You're sometimes playing 2 or 3 games a day, which in the heat and maybe you're playing on turf and it's really hot out. You kind of get to know your teammates a little bit better, and you trust them a little bit more because you've been through some hard times in the summer together. You're still playing against good teams. Your team might not be as good as the other teams, but you're playing against higher competition. You play in your position because sometimes on these travel teams, you're not playing the position that you might play in the spring with your high school coach. So I think that's an advantage to play with your high school team. And I also think that if you're going to get better, you're going to get seen by your high school coach or your high school coaches. They're going to correct your mistakes, and sometimes not all travel coaches will be correcting mistakes. They're there to win games and win tournaments, and some are, some aren't. It's kind of a crapshoot. You got to kind of watch where you go and to see who's your coach and if they're going to take you to the next level.
Do you think there's a way for travel teams to like have better diversity within them, because that's something that people think is a problem?
You can find good city travel teams. That's for sure. For example, Lane Tech's main field, Lane Tech in the city is Kerry Wood Stadium. Yeah. Okay, and there's a weekend. There's a tournament there every weekend. Okay. Another field that's being used is Ozinga Field, which is way out in Crestwood, out by Joliet area. Again, a very highly populated tournaments are there. Teams go there for tournaments. So the diversity does happen in baseball. It's just that the teams that top tier is more of a suburban-ish. It started way out in Libertyville a long time ago, and it's created a little bit bigger network of people coming to them now. So, and there's other organizations. I just use top tier because a lot of our guys go to them. So I just think that you can find a little more diverse team, and you can definitely there are tournaments out there that are diverse. So to say that, I think it's all depends on where that organization is looking to play.
So because of travel baseball's rise in popularity, less kids have been playing house baseball. Coach Knapp's had some insight on why this is maybe happening. Why do you think the house leagues or rec leagues have been like on the decline the past like 15 years?
I think that part of the problem is kids leaving their area that they grow up because they want to find something better. When they leave that area, they don't want to play house league. They want to play with, so-called good players. I don't agree with, but that's just my opinion. I think everybody should play house league. I think it's fun. I think it's kids that you're growing up with, kids that you're going to grammar school with. I think that baseball should be fun. It shouldn't be a work. I think the way they used to do it might not be the best way, where the best players from that house league is now chosen to represent your area as the travel team, and then you do travel experience sometime at the end of June and all of July.
So I think another argument people make about this is that like overall there's just less enthusiasm about baseball because people point to like not as many people go to professional games. Kids can't a lot of kids don't know who Mike Trout is or something like that, and so they think, well, it's the same at the house level too. So how do we get like kids to be more enthusiastic about it?
I don't have a definite answer on that one. That's a good question. I think the strike hurt. I do see fans still going to games. You can go out on a Sunday and go out to Duke Childs Field, and you'll see 100 little kids running around going to base. And so I think there is some kind of support there where kids are doing something. I think that at some point they find out, oh, I like lacrosse a little bit better than baseball, and then they'll choose. But I think most of the good players in baseball stay with baseball. Our numbers this year for tryouts were pretty good still, and So I think that still the enthusiasm is there. I just see it. I think you're right in a little bit that it's dwindling slightly because I think there's so many other distractions out there. We've had a number of kids that started out on the B team baseball or football or basketball and end up being starters varsity year, senior year. So what I can tell kids out there, don't get discouraged. If you enjoy it, you like watching it, you like playing it, continue playing, to continue getting better. You don't need a bunch of lessons to get better. Playing catch, playing baseball 2-3 times a week is just good enough. Don't overburden yourself with lessons. Don't overburden yourself with I got to be here at a certain time. Have fun. I know when I was growing up, we would just go out to the park. Whoever was, it's almost like the movie Sandlot. We'd go out and we'd have our 8, 7, 10 guys, who knows, and whoever shows up that day, and we play 5-on-5 or 4-on-4. So whatever we did, and that just kind of, my parents just wanted us out of the house, you know.
So thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you want my opinion on this, personally, I'm not against the idea of travel baseball. I think that if you are talented and you have the work ethic to play with better competition and with more like advanced coaching, then go right ahead. That's great. But I think that, you know, there also should be an option for kids to play house ball. And it's really sad that a lot of these travel teams, when they produce a higher quality, well, a so-called higher quality experience, they're inadvertently raising the prices of rec leagues, and that's not what's supposed to happen. So I hope you guys enjoyed this very special episode of Commissioner's Office Podcast. If you want to take a look at my recent episodes, you can find me on my page. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify, wherever you're listening to this right now. Make sure to also tune into my radio show, Chicago Sports Unlimited. It's on Thursdays from 4 to 4:30, and the show is on 88.1 FM WNTH. See you next time, everyone.